You're listening to The Observing Eye. Pirate radio for the mind. Coming at you fresh from the computer hell cabin.
Hello, you beautiful lot. It's Friday, the 8th of March, 2024, and you're listening to episode 55 of The Observing Eye, coming at you live, as always, from the computer hell cabin. Every week, we get psychological, philosophical, and all manner of introspective. I'm David, and this week, we're going to be talking about developing a growth mindset. Imagine for a moment two artists facing a blank canvas, or two product managers brainstorming their next big idea. On the surface, they might seem similar in their pursuits. Yet, what distinguishes their outcomes, their approach to challenges, and their resilience in the face of setbacks is often not just talent or opportunity, it's their mindset. Coined by psychologist Carol Dweck, the concept of a growth mindset has revolutionized the way we understand learning, intelligence, and success. Unlike a fixed mindset, which views talent and intelligence as static traits, a growth mindset thrives on challenge and sees failure not as evidence of unintelligence, but as a springboard for growth and for stretching our existing abilities. But how do we cultivate this mindset? Is it possible to shift from seeing obstacles as insurmountable barriers to viewing them as opportunities to evolve? Today, we're going to explore not just the essence of a growth mindset, but also how various philosophical traditions have approached the concept of growth and learning. From the resilience-promoting philosophies of Stoicism to the adaptability and continuous improvement found in Eastern philosophies, we're going to dive into the thoughts and ideas surrounding personal growth. And most importantly, I'm going to try to arm you with some practical strategies and tools that you can use to foster this mindset in yourself. So whether you are fully on the way to cultivating a growth mindset, or if you're just starting to explore what it means, then this episode is for you. So as we embark then on understanding a growth mindset, I thought it might be useful if we had a look at what we actually mean by the term. Now, I just mentioned there, didn't I, growth mindset, concept introduced by the psychologist Carol Dweck. It's not just about having a positive attitude towards learning and towards our own capabilities. It's having a fundamental belief that our basic abilities can be developed and improved through dedication and through effort, essentially. Now, the contrary idea to the growth mindset is the fixed mindset. And this is where individuals believe that their talents and intelligence are static traits. So they think that they've got a certain amount of intelligence and that's it. There is no more in the pot. You get what you're given and that's it. The thing with a fixed mindset is that when we have that sort of perspective, challenges can quickly become threats, and efforts are often avoided for fear of just not looking good enough. And we kind of attach our efforts to our sense of identity. So when we get feedback, it can be kind of absorbed in a very emotional way. It can be taken quite personally. With the growth mindset, where we have this understanding that our talents and our abilities, they are starting points. They are not like the fixed limits to what we can achieve. We can take this approach that with effort, with some kind of strategy behind it and with some persistence, we can expand our abilities and we can learn more effectively. Taking this approach, this ideology, it kind of opens up a much broader range of possibilities where we view challenges as opportunities to grow. A bit like the whole Stoic idea of the obstacle is the way. You know, we look at effort as the path to mastery, and we see feedback as a tool for improvement, as something we can use as part of our self-reflection and self-awareness practices. Now, one of the most powerful aspects of a growth mindset is its impact on how we deal with setbacks. Instead of seeing failure as a reflection of our intelligence or self-worth, a growth mindset encourages us to see failure as an integral part of the learning process. It's not that we failed and that's it, that's the end. It's that we've encountered a hurdle and now we have the opportunity to overcome it, to learn from it, and to continue moving forward. It's important to note, however, that having a growth mindset doesn't mean ignoring our weaknesses or pretending that they don't exist. What it does mean is that we embrace them as areas for development. It's about shifting from a focus on proving ourselves to a focus on improving ourselves, which can significantly alter our path to success and fulfillment. So, why is developing a growth mindset so crucial? Well, fundamentally, it lays the foundation for our resilience, our adaptability, and our continuous learning. In a world that's constantly changing, where new challenges arise daily, a growth mindset empowers us to embrace change, to tackle obstacles head on, and to persist in the face of adversity. It's essentially about becoming lifelong learners, constantly evolving and adapting. As we delve deeper into this topic today, keep that definition in mind. Growth mindset is the belief in our capacity to grow, hence the name, and our commitment to making that growth a reality. Now, of course, it wouldn't be the observing eye if I didn't get philosophical on you at some point. So I'm going to borrow some ideas and thoughts from some of my favorite philosophers and try and weave that into this idea around the growth mindset. So we've talked about what the growth mindset is and what's involved and the difference between a growth and a fixed mindset. So let's look at some of the wisdom of philosophers and thinkers who have grappled with these sorts of concepts around like continuous growth and improvement. So obviously the term growth mindset is a modern idea, a modern phrase, but it has philosophical roots that stretch way, way back into history, because the whole idea of philosophy is to look at how we think, to think about how we think, and to find ways to improve it. So firstly, we're going to go to my favorites. We're going to go back to the Stoics of ancient Greece and Rome. And if you've heard any episodes of this podcast before, you will be familiar with a fair bit of this already. But for you newbies, let me explain. Stoicism, if you haven't come across it before, teaches the value of focusing on what we can control and letting go of what we can't. The philosophy hugely encourages resilience, which is an essential component of the growth mindset. Good old Marcus Aurelius, a very famous Stoic emperor, wrote in his Meditations, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is the way." They didn't write "this is the way," that's something else. You know, if you know, you know. So that whole thing, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. That entirely reflects the growth mindset's idea around embracing challenges as opportunities to learn rather than hideous obstacles that we have to avoid. Stoicism also has a huge emphasis on self-discipline, on resilience, and the pursuit of virtue, which again aligns very closely with the principles of a growth mindset. The Stoics believe that our character and our virtues could always be developed further through reflection, practice, and perseverance. Now we're going to look eastwards a little bit towards Buddhism and Taoism, because these offer some really interesting insights that, again, echo some of the growth mindset principles. Buddhism, with its focus on personal development and overcoming suffering, through mindfulness and ethical living. This teaches us that change and growth are intrinsic to the human experience. The concept of beginner's mind in Zen Buddhism, approaching every situation with openness and the willingness to learn, beautifully encapsulates the essence of a growth mindset. I might write an article on the beginner's mind and put it on the Substack, because I think it's quite an interesting one to look into, especially as we are on this subject at the minute anyway. So yeah, keep a lookout for that. It will be coming in the next week before the next episode comes out. I'll put something together on the beginner's mind that you can have a read of to try and support some of this stuff. And then, of course, where would we be if we didn't bring in Jean-Paul? Not Jean-Paul. I nearly went Jean-Claude. Bring in Jean-Claude Van Damme, the famous Belgian philosopher Jean-Claude Van Damme. No, Jean-Paul Sartre, and one of my favourite modern philosophers, who is Friedrich Nietzsche. They've both got some stuff to say that kind of resonates with the ideas of the growth mindset. So Sartre's concept of radical freedom and responsibility, I brought this up a lot because I think it's been relevant to a lot of the stuff we've been talking about lately. But his concept of radical freedom and responsibility, they emphasize that we are the architects of our own essence through our actions and choices. And in a similar vein, Nietzsche's notion of becoming who you are challenges us to embrace life's struggles as opportunities for self-creation and growth. So there's a couple of philosophical ideas there for you to have a think about. As always, I try not to go into too much depth with some of the philosophy stuff. Did I say psychological ideas? Philosophical ideas. Some of this philosophical stuff, because we could be here for a very long time if I started going into some of this stuff in depth. But I'm just giving you some pointers so that if it's something that's of interest to you, then you can go and do some research around some of that yourself. What I am looking to do in future, this is a shameless plug for upcoming content, is I'm going to be doing some special episodes on certain philosophers and their mindsets and ideas, because philosophy forms such an underpinning foundation of this podcast, of this content, that I'd like to go into some depth on some of the ones that I use and that I think are relevant, so that you've got more understanding of the falafel. Some more understanding of the falafel that helps at the philosophy that helps to, that a lot of this content is based on. So I'm going to be putting those together in the coming weeks. We have one more episode around Beyond Resolutions, and then I'll move into some philosophy in a bit more depth, and hopefully that will keep you interested. So that's it. That's the philosophical side of it. So let's put the philosophy away and let's get on to the science. We all love science. Science is good. Science is nice. So there's some science backing up this idea of a growth mindset. And again, I'm not going to go into too much mad depth. We're just going to look up some of these ideas to give you some sort of thoughts on it. The growth mindset theory, it's understanding that our brains are not fixed. But they are actually like putty, incredibly malleable. So the malleability of the mind, or the brain, not the mind, is called neuroplasticity. And it is a real cornerstone in neuroscience. It essentially refers to our brain's ability to change and adapt as a result of experience. Neuroplasticity shows us that our intellectual abilities can be developed, our neural pathways can be strengthened, and even new ones can be created through learning and practice. Now, research led by Carol Dweck, who is the psychologist who pioneered this growth mindset idea, and her colleagues have demonstrated that students who were taught about neuroplasticity and the malleable nature of intelligence were more likely to adopt a growth mindset. So this shift in perspective not only boosted their academic performance, but also increased their resilience in the face of academic challenges. But the impact of a growth mindset extends beyond individual achievements. It influences how we perceive and interact with others, fostering environments that encourage risk-taking, persistence, and continuous learning. In both workplace and educational settings, promoting a growth mindset can lead to cultures where innovation flourishes and challenges are embraced rather than avoided. What's perhaps the most encouraging about the science of the growth mindset is its applicability across our lifespans. It is not too late to develop a growth mindset. Whether it's in your childhood, your adolescence, your adulthood, your old age, the brain remains responsive to experiences and capable of remarkable change. So we have to remember that, it's not like you get to 21 and your brain stops growing. You can't change. It can. It's neuroplasticity. You can rewire some of this stuff through effort and persistence and learning, which means that you can learn things whatever age you are, and we can recognize that we can learn things. The fixed mindset idea is that, I'm 40 years old, 50, 60, whatever. That's it now. I can't learn anything new. I is what I am. It's not the case. Not the case at all. You can start learning new things whenever you like. So that's a little bit of the science behind it. I'm not going to go too much into neuroplasticity because it is not my field. I am a philosopher, not a doctor or anything like that. So I don't want to start going into that in too much detail. I'm just putting it out there so you understand that neuroplasticity, growth mindset are interlinked. Okay. What I'm going to do next, because I like to try and give you things to think about to help you to embrace and take on some of these ideas that come up in the episodes, is I'm going to give you some strategies for developing a growth mindset. Okay. So we know what it is. We know that there's some science behind it. We know that there's some philosophy behind it. But how do we actually apply it to ourselves? There's the concept of the growth mindset, but how do we actually live it? How do we bring it into our day-to-day existence? So I'm going to give you a couple of ideas that you can think about and try, and we'll go from there. So firstly, going back to the obstacle is the way, we need to embrace challenges. So one of the first steps in developing a growth mindset is to start seeing challenges not as these insurmountable obstacles, but as opportunities to grow and to learn about ourselves, essentially. So the next time that you are faced with a task that pushes you out of your comfort zone, try and shift your perspective a little bit. View it as a chance to expand your abilities and do that with some self-compassion in mind, because you're not necessarily going to succeed on the first try, and that's fine. Shit happens. Try it again and again and again and again and again. You'll get it. You're going to be uncomfortable, but that's the point. Growth happens in the space of discomfort. When we're comfortable, we don't need to grow because we're not challenged. So you've got to put yourself in that challenging space. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Next thing we need to think about is celebrating effort and not just talent. So you need to praise and recognize your efforts and also the efforts of others around you. Understanding that dedication and hard work are key drivers of success. Consistently doing the work, putting in the effort. And we need to focus on the process rather than our sort of innate abilities. And we have to reinforce the belief that improvement and mastery are achievable through perseverance and doing the work. Then we need a bit of feedback. We've got to learn from criticism. I know it can be difficult to accept criticism sometimes because there can be the emotional side to it. We can feel like we are being attacked in some way when people criticize us, especially if we've been, criticized in poor form when we were younger. It doesn't resonate well with us. However, feedback is an invaluable tool for growth. When we get feedback, we have to try to listen openly, and we have to try and identify actionable insights that can help us to improve. Doesn't mean we have to agree with everything. We haven't got to agree with every single bit of criticism that someone's giving us. But we need to learn to discern what's helpful out of that criticism and use it as a stepping stone for our own development. We need to cultivate curiosity. That's a really important part of the growth mindset, curiosity. We have to stay curious, and we have to be open-minded. We have to approach new topics and skills with some enthusiasm and a desire to actually learn about it, rather than coming at it with the initial fear that we're not going to be good enough. Ask questions, seek out challenges, and allow your curiosity to guide your whole learning experience. We need to celebrate the success of others. And I bring this up, I mentioned it briefly, but I bring this up because it's very easy to be envious and resentful of others. And this comes from our fixed mindset, because with a fixed mindset, we see success as like a zero-sum game. With a growth mindset, we are encouraged to find inspiration in the achievement of others. And we celebrate their success, which doesn't just foster this sense of community and support, but it allows us to learn from their experiences and their strategies. If we look at someone else's achievements through envy, we immediately shut it down and we're disinterested. And we're doing ourselves a disservice in that space, because there's so much that we can learn from how other people do things. And if we approach it without that kind of prejudgment, without that emotional overlay, and just recognize that, yeah, that was a pretty damn fucking good way to do that, it makes our lives a damn sight easier as well. We're using someone else's effort as a shortcut to learn how to do something better, which we can then apply to ourselves and, maybe even make that process better through our own strategies and ideas. So think about that. Think about being celebratory of other people's successes, and don't be an envious arsehole. And lastly, we need to reflect and reassess. So this is kind of an iterative process where we have to take time to reflect on our experiences, on our mindset, and our approach to challenges. So we want to become more aware, basically, of when we might be slipping into the sort of fixed mindset territory. So by being reflective, by applying some self-awareness and questioning our behavior, holding ourselves accountable and all that stuff, we can sort of clock when we're getting fixed and try and redirect our thoughts back into that growth mindset space. Again, this is very easily said and more difficult to do, but it's practice. It's just practice. Being mindful of our thoughts and engaging some energy in trying to redirect them in a different direction. Because, whether our mind goes where the energy flows, right? And if our energy is fixed and negative and we're shutting things down, then the mind will follow that. So we need to try and redirect our energy into something, into that sort of growth space. And it's a very continuous process, this growth mindset stuff. It requires intention, it requires effort, it requires patience, and it requires quelle surprise self-compassion. But the outcomes are fabulous. We get increased resilience. We become better at learning. We get a deeper sense of fulfillment. All of this stuff is worth the effort. So out of all those strategies that I've talked about, have a go at integrating some of them into your daily routine. Don't try and do it all at once, because that's the path to failure, is to try and do all the things. Pick one or two and start working on them. And then when you've got them down, maybe add another one and add another one. But just take it slow and be patient with yourself. And remember that this is, as I said, this requires effort, this stuff. None of these things that we do where we try to improve our thinking are easy. They all require a significant amount of cognitive load. But it gets easier over time. The more we do it, the more we start to think. It's that whole neuroplasticity thing. The more we start to think and perceive in a certain way, the more the brain becomes accustomed to doing it. And the brain will walk the most trodden path. So make the most trodden path one of growth rather than a fixed mindset, essentially. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all I have to say on the subject of developing a growth mindset. As we part ways, I want to leave you with a thought. Developing a growth mindset is not a destination. It's a journey. It's a continual process of becoming more open to experiences, more resilient in the face of challenges, and more committed to your personal growth. The path is not always going to be easy, but it is going to be rewarding. I want to thank all of you, as always, for choosing to spend your time with me here today. Your presence and attention is greatly appreciated, and I hope there's been something in this episode that you've been able to take away and can apply to your human experience. If today's episode has resonated with you, if it's sparked a thought or it's inspired a change, I would love to hear from you. You can share your stories with me via Substack at theobservingeye.com or on social media. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/@theobservingeye and on TikTok and Instagram with the handle @theobservingeye as well. Until our next episode, keep growing, keep learning, and keep embracing the endless possibilities that come with a growth mindset. Take care, everybody. Much love, and I'll catch you soon.
You've been listening to The Observing Eye. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I hope it's been useful. And if you're interested in any more of my writing or work around psychology, philosophy, and general day-to-day living, please go and take a look at my Substack, which is theobservingeye.com. And that's I as in the letter, not I as in the gelatinous organ through which you see. Take care, everybody. Much love, and I'll catch you soon.